Hello, everyone. Back tuning in to JMA Friday. We're going to have a look at the weather coming month with the Japanese and American CFSB2 models. Looks like we're going to be in for quite a lot of unsettled weather this month, so I don't give too much away by telling you about low pressure. Looks like it's going to be fairly dominant. Signals for quite a lot of northern blocking as well. I did the blog update last night, looking at the latest update from the UK Met Office Contingency Planners Guidance for the next month. That suggests quite a mixed April with some fairly wet and cool conditions possible at times. If you haven't looked at gasoviz.com and our blog at gasoviz, just click the button that says blog. You can see it on the top menu bar at the top of the page. It says blog. Just click that. You'll be able to go off and read the update that we did last night. Try to update it at least once or twice a week if there's enough going on with the weather to warrant it. So there's written content at gasoviz as well. A lot of people don't realise that. I think it's just a video website. It's also significant written content as well. So do check out the blog update. But today's JMA Friday video is going to sort of back up UK Met Office idea for a fairly unsettled and mixed period coming up. So I'll show you all the charts in a second. Before I get on with that, just say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse widgets and click through the links. If there's any articles that you're interested in, thanks so much for doing that. This video ads to most of the pages, which open up the content. When you watch them, they'll close back up again. It does help to pay for gasworthies.com, so thanks so much for doing that. So I'm going to start off with 500 millibar height anomalies from the JMA. These are broken down into weekly periods, and then we'll have a look at the CFS V2 as well. So this is the Northern Hemisphere view first of all. We'll have a look at the temperature and precipitation from the tropical and mid-latitude view in a second. But first of all, we can start off looking down from the top of the planet, from the North Pole down at the UK. UK is just here. Not always that easy to make us out. So 500 millibars, 8,000 feet, is an area in the absolute high pressure, low pressure being moved around by the jet stream ring. But this is essentially what weather is, the movement of air masses by the jet stream. So blue extrapolates to low pressure and yellow, orange and red extrapolates to high pressure. So for the coming week, we see a trough of low pressure to the northwest and digging down into the Atlantic. Then we've got this ridge sitting up to the east and the northeast. It means that the flow goes something like that. So it's fairly mixed, but it is quite warm actually. We'll be bringing up warmer air from the south, especially early on in the period, because the orientation of the trough to the west and the ridge to the east means that we pull up more of a southerly flow really. So that could be a warmer phase coming up just for the coming week, going from the 1st to the 8th of April. But it's still fairly unsettled. As we go through to week 2, this is going from the 8th through to the 15th of April, we revert to a cooler pattern here. We've got quite a lot of blocking being seen, quite a lot of northern blocking sitting to the north, particularly around Greenland. And then we've got this trough of low pressure down to the south. And this means that the flow is going into the east and possibly even the northeast, rather like that. So this could be quite a cool week coming up from the 8th to the 15th. This is quite a deep trough as well, sitting to the south. Fairly deep blue colours here. So I think this could bring quite a bit of rain, especially to southern parts of the country. It could be one of those situations where it's colder and wetter in the south and it's drier and milder up in the north. You tend to get this a bit in spring, particularly in April and May, when the Atlantic is just about at its weakest and you tend to bring in quite a lot of easterly winds. It can turn really quite cool and wet for southern parts through the spring, whereas the north actually gets it a little bit better. And then in week 3 and week 4, so this takes us to the end of April. It's going from the 15th through to the 29th of the month. Well, the signal is weakening here, but still a lot of yellow sitting up to the north here. So, again, signals for northern blocking to be around Greenland and extending up to the North Pole, with the trough of low pressure generally going to the south. I think the jet stream's still a bit to the south here as well. So, again, probably bringing in quite cool easterly, northeasterly winds, I would have thought. Although it's probably not as wet as it is in that week 2 period as unsettled, the suggestion is still really for low pressure to be running underneath this ridge that's sitting to the north. So it could be really quite cool and unsettled there as we're going through week 3 and week 4. Probably not as bad though as week 2. Let's have a look at the mid-latitude view then and the tropics. So the British Isles on this chart is up here in the very far top right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. Again, this is the 500 millibar height anomaly, first of all, looking through the centre of the planet. You can't see the North Pole on these charts, but remember what we've got going on for this week 1 period, which is the 8th, 1st through to the 8th, is that I've got the ridge out to the east and the trough to the west. So this should be a warmer week with the flow going rather like that, and again, rather like that. We're bringing up southerly influences through the first week of April. So that means that the temperature anomaly is indeed coming out above average, a warmer than average week being suggested there. Now, don't run away with the idea it's going to be a heat wave. It isn't, but it's probably going to be a bit milder than we've been used to, particularly over the weekend and into the start of next week. The precipitation anomaly, that's coming out a bit wetter than average. The rain coming out a bit above average. So again, quite an unsettled week coming up, even if the temperatures are picking up a bit. Then week 2, which is the 8th through to the 15th, this one looks very, very unsettled. Again, you can't see the Greenland and North Pole region, but we know we've got a ridge sitting up here and a trough of low pressure down to the south, which means that the flow is probably from the east or the northeast, so it's unsettled and potentially cool. So the temperatures are going colder than average here for the 2nd week of April. After that warmer start to the month, definite signals for the temperatures to be going under the average, and quite significantly so, actually. That does look like really quite a cold period coming up for April anyway, in the 2nd week of the month. Precipitation looks a bit drier than average in the north, but the south coming out a bit wetter than average once again. And then finally week 3 and week 4, this takes us to the end of the month, 15th through to the 29th. Once more, we've got the blocking, we know this, up to the north, but you can't see on this chart. The trough of low pressure is generally, with the jet stream, going to the south of the country, rather like that. So the temperature anomaly through the 2nd half of April, it's recovering a little bit, but it's still generally on the modest side, maybe a little bit nearer to the average, but overall a fairly cool week 3 and week 4, perhaps hinting at a little bit above average. But remember, these models are a little bit biased towards milder conditions, actually. So I would think that still is generally quite a cool couple of weeks there. Could be transition, of course. Maybe week 3 is significantly cooler than average, and then week 4 is significantly warmer than average, something like that. We always have to bear in mind that these are anomalies, so over a 2-weekly period, you could get a big deviation from week 3 to week 4. And then the rainfall anomaly, that comes out above average again. So really quite a wet April coming up, if this is right. All the weeks generally coming out with above average rainfall. It's the temperatures that are a bit up and down, starting off quite warm, then going quite cold, and then pretty cool through the 2nd half of the month as well. Right, let's have a look and see whether the CFS V2 is agreeing with all of this. So we'll have a look at the 500 millibar height anomalies, and then have a look at the temperature and precipitation anomalies that go with this. Again, these are broken down into week period, so the first week period will take us from the 1st through to the 7th of April. Very, very similar here with the CFS V2 to the JMA. So we've got the trough of low pressure to the north and the west of the coming week. We've got the ridging sitting to the east of the country. So again, this means that the flow and the jet stream is doing something a bit like that. So it is probably quite a mild period coming out through the coming week, particularly early on. But with trough of low pressure close to us, it is probably quite unsettled as well. Week 2, the 8th through to the 14th, is a little bit different to the JMA. It looks very unsettled. This is quite a deep trough around the west of Europe. But the ridging is in a slightly different position, more centred towards Scandinavia. So although the jet stream is digging southwards, it's probably not quite as cool as we see on the JMA. It's probably not quite as cold, but generally I think fairly disappointing temperatures, if anything, and really unsettled. There could be a lot of heavy rain in with that. Week 3, which is the 15th through 21st of April, again placing the trough around the west of Europe with the ridge up to the north of the country. That is proper northern blocking here, so I think the flow is more or less easterly, maybe even northeasterly. That looks cool and unsettled with that trough of low pressure. And then finally we go through to week 4, which is the 22nd through 28th of April. And it just goes on, really. It does look like a very unsettled April, with a trough, again, sitting around the UK and west of Europe. northern blocking now, a lot of northern blocking to the north of the country, so I would assume we're bringing down pretty cool air into this trough from the east and from the northeast. Let's see what the temperatures are doing. So the coming week, that from the 1st to the 7th temperature anomaly is around or a little bit warmer than average. It looks like it's going to be a fairly mild week coming up. Week 2, which goes from the 8th through to the 14th of April, that's generally going cooler than average. Notice, I probably can't make it out all that well, but there is a little splotch of orange in northern Scotland, so it's a bit warmer in the far north, but much of England and Wales coming out cooler than average. As I said, in this sort of setup, it tends to be worse in the south and a bit better in the north, actually. That goes on into week 3, with England and Wales suggested to have quite a cool week, whereas the north of Scotland, anyway, could come out just a little bit milder than average. I think overall probably quite a cool week coming up there. And then week 4, which is the 22nd to the 28th of April, that looking significantly cooler than average as well. So really quite a cool week, or quite a cool month coming up through April. In terms of the rainfall, for the coming week, it's generally a bit wetter than average. And then week 2, that looks a bit better actually for rainfall. That looks a bit drier through that week, although the trough was very close to west of Europe, so not quite sure what it's doing there, but it is suggesting a drier week for week 2. Week 3, the signal is weakening now, so it's sort of average with the precipitation, I would assume, with a trough of low pressure around the country. It's probably going to be quite wet. And then week 4, that also coming out close to average once again. I think it loses the signal a bit for precipitation as we get through to the second half of April. And with the patterns as they're suggested on the 500 millibar heights, anyway, I would think this is going to be quite a wet April, to be honest. I think we will see above average rainfall if it comes off, as these two models are suggesting. And the temperature's looking really quite disappointing as well. After a fairly mild first week, overall, the signal is really quite cool for much of the month. So a pretty cool and unsettled and wet April. Looks like it's on the way if the CFS and JMA models are to be believed. We'll have Terry's month-ahead forecast this evening at Gazzo. This Terry Sky will give us his April forecast this evening. See whether that's is backing up these ideas. And then tomorrow it's a week-ahead forecast, and I'll also be issuing the Gaz Weather Vince month-ahead forecast at April as well. So it all concerns April for the next day or so. Right, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.